When I was 27 years old, I decided I wanted to travel the world. I worked in a small town as a car mechanic. My days were always the same. Fixing cars, changing oil, checking engines. It was good, honest work. But something inside me felt empty. I wanted to see new places, meet new people, live a bigger life. There was only one problem. I didn't speak English. I knew a few words like hello, thank you, and goodbye. That was all. Every time I thought about going to another country, fear stopped me. How would I buy food? How would I find a hotel? How would I ask for help if I got lost? One cold evening in November, I sat in my kitchen, drinking tea and feeling sad. I opened my old laptop and looked at pictures of faraway places. London, New York, Sydney, Cape Town. I wanted to go so badly. At that moment, I made a decision. I would learn English. Even if it was hard, even if it took a long time. I would do it. The next day I went to a small bookstore in town. I bought a beginner's English book. It had big letters, colorful pictures, and simple exercises. When I got home, I opened the first page. It said, "Hello, my name is John. What is your name?" I laughed. It was so simple, but it was also exciting. I read the sentences out loud again and again. My cat looked at me like I was crazy, but I didn't care. I felt like a child again, learning to speak for the first time. Every evening after work, I sat at my kitchen table with my English book. I read out loud, copied words into a notebook, and listened to simple dialogues online. At first, it was very hard. My tongue felt heavy. My mouth made strange sounds. Sometimes I wanted to give up. But every time I imagined myself standing in Times Square or walking along the Thames, I found new energy. After 2 months, I could understand basic sentences. I could say things like, "Where is the station?" and "I would like a coffee, please." It wasn't much, but it was a start. One evening, I had an idea. I went to a cafe where tourists sometimes came. I ordered a coffee and sat near a group of English-speaking travelers. I listened carefully, trying to catch words. I understood maybe 5% of what they said. Still, I smiled. It was 5% more than before. Learning English became part of my life. Like brushing my teeth or eating breakfast. I didn't think about it anymore. I just did it. Slowly, my world started to change. After about 6 months, something amazing happened. I started dreaming in English. It was simple English, of course. In my dream, I was in a hotel, asking for a room. I said, "Hello, I need a room for 2 nights." The woman at the desk smiled and gave me a key. When I woke up, I felt strange. My brain was changing. English was not just something I studied. It was becoming part of me. One day at work, a tourist came to the garage. His rental car had a problem. My boss asked me to help because I knew a little English. I walked up to the man, my heart beating fast. I said, "Hello, can I help you?" He smiled and explained the problem slowly. I understood enough to fix the car. When I gave him the keys, he shook my hand and said, "Thank you, you saved my holiday." I smiled all day after that. I decided I was ready for the next step. I signed up for an English course online. It was not expensive, and the teacher was from England. She spoke clearly and was very patient. The first time I had a live lesson, I was so nervous I almost closed my laptop. But I stayed. I listened. I spoke. I made mistakes, but the teacher always smiled and said, "Good job." After each lesson, I felt stronger. Around this time, I started watching TV shows in English. At first, I watched with subtitles. Then without them. Sometimes I understood only half. Sometimes I just guessed. But little by little, my ear got better. I started to hear the rhythm of English, the way words dance together. I repeated funny phrases to myself when I walked to work. I felt like a secret agent learning a secret code. The more English I learned, the more I wanted to learn. I bought more books. I joined a chat group for English learners. I wrote simple messages and felt proud when someone answered. Every time I understood a new word or a new joke, it felt like winning a small prize. English was not just a tool for travel anymore. It was becoming a passion. I didn't know it yet, but my life was already changing in ways I could not imagine. Then one night, after a long day, I opened my laptop and bought a plane ticket. A real ticket. My first trip alone. Destination, London. The day of my flight came faster than I expected. I packed my small suitcase, put on my best jacket, and checked my passport at least 5 times. My mother gave me a hug and said, "Be careful, and don't lose your wallet." I smiled, but inside I was full of fear. What if I didn't understand anything? What if I got lost? What if people laughed at my English? But it was too late to change my mind. I said goodbye and got into the taxi. At the airport, everything felt like a dream. People rushed around with suitcases. Announcements echoed in English and other languages I didn't know. I walked up to the check-in desk, my hands shaking. I said, "Good morning, I have a ticket to London." The woman behind the counter smiled and asked for my passport. I understood her. She understood me. I almost cried from happiness. The flight was short but exciting. I watched the clouds from the window and tried to imagine London below. When we landed, I followed the signs through the airport. They were in English, of course, but this time I could read them. Passport control was easy. The officer asked, "Business or pleasure?" I answered, "Tourism." He stamped my passport, and just like that, I was in England. The first thing I noticed outside was the cold wind. I pulled my jacket tighter and found the train station. I had practiced this moment many times in my head. I went to the ticket machine, touched the screen, and bought a ticket to the city center. I got on the train and sat near the window. The city moved past me, houses, parks, people with umbrellas. I was really here. I had crossed a sea, a language, and a fear. When I arrived in central London, I felt a little dizzy. The streets were full of cars, red buses, and people speaking quickly. I walked slowly, dragging my suitcase behind me. I stopped at a cafe to rest. I went inside and said, "A coffee, please." The man behind the counter smiled and asked, "To stay or to go?" I didn't understand immediately, but then I guessed. "To stay," I said. He gave me a cup and I sat by the window, sipping the hot coffee and watching the busy street. Over the next few days, I visited famous places. Big Ben, the Tower Bridge, the British Museum. I asked for directions many times. Sometimes I didn't understand the answers. Sometimes I asked people to speak slowly. No one ever laughed at me. Everyone was kind. Some even said, "Your English is good." I wanted to laugh when they said that because I knew it was not true. But it didn't matter. I could communicate. I was free. Every evening in my small hotel room, I thought about the day. I made a list in my mind of all the things I had done in English. Bought tickets. Asked questions. Ordered food. Made small talk with strangers. It felt like climbing a mountain and reaching a new height every day. On my last night in London, I sat in Hyde Park, looking at the city lights. A man sat down on the bench next to me. He was about my age. He said something about the cold weather. I answered. We started talking. He was from Ireland and was visiting London too. We talked for an hour about travel, football, food. When I walked back to my hotel, I realized something important. I didn't just survive in English. I lived in English. When I returned home, I felt like a different person. My town looked smaller, quieter, older. My garage was still there, and the cars still broke down as they always did. My co-workers asked me about London. I told them a few funny stories, but it was hard to explain everything. Inside me, something had changed forever. I no longer felt trapped in one place. I had tasted freedom, and I wanted more. At night, after work, I opened my laptop and searched for other countries. Spain, Italy, Australia, Canada. I read travel blogs written in English. I watched videos. I listened to podcasts. The more I listened, the more natural English became. It was no longer a subject I studied. It was a tool I used to explore the world. One evening I found an online group for people who loved travel and languages. I joined without thinking much. They had video meetings every Saturday night. At first, I was scared to speak. My voice sounded strange to me. I made mistakes. But nobody cared. Everyone was friendly. They came from all over the world: Brazil, Japan, Germany, Mexico. English was the bridge that connected us. Sometimes we talked about travel, sometimes about food, sometimes just about life. One Saturday, a woman named Anna from Portugal said she wanted to visit Scotland. I wrote in the chat, "I want to go too." Another man, Luca from Italy, said, "Let's make a small group trip." It sounded crazy, but exciting. We spent the next weeks planning everything in English. Hotels, trains, places to see. We decided to meet in Edinburgh in July. That summer, I worked extra hours to save money. I watched every pound. I didn't buy new clothes. I didn't go out with friends. Every time I felt tired, I imagined standing on the green hills of Scotland, speaking English with new friends from around the world. When the day finally came, I stood in the airport again. This time, I was not afraid. I was excited. I flew to Edinburgh, and when I saw Anna and Luca at the station, we hugged like old friends. We spoke English the whole time, laughing, getting lost, finding little cafes and hidden castles. Some evenings, we sat in pubs with warm lights and slow music, talking for hours. One night, after a long walk by the sea, Anna said, "You know, your English is really good now." I laughed and said, "I just can't stop learning it." And it was true. I didn't want to stop. English had given me a key to the world, and every time I used it, another door opened. After Scotland, I understood something very important. Traveling was not just about taking pictures or visiting famous places. Traveling was about people. It was about speaking, listening, understanding. It was about laughing with someone you just met. It was about feeling at home even in a country far from your own. And all of that was possible because of English. Without English, I could not have shared those jokes, those long talks, those small beautiful moments. English was not a subject for me anymore. It was a bridge, and every step on that bridge led to a new friend, a new story, a new part of life. When I returned home, I noticed that even my town looked different. The same streets, the same houses, the same small shops. But now I walked through them with new eyes. I was no longer just the car mechanic from a small town. I was a man who could speak to the world. In the evenings, I continued my English. I didn't force myself. It was something natural now. I watched interviews with travelers and explorers. I listened to podcasts about history and science. I read short novels and travel books. My notebook, the same one I started with, was now full of words, phrases, little sentences I liked. Sometimes I opened a random page and read it aloud. It felt like talking to an old friend. One evening, while I was drinking tea and reading, I had an idea. I wanted to visit a country where English was not the first language. I wanted to see if English could still help me there. I chose the Netherlands. I heard that many Dutch people spoke excellent English. I booked a cheap flight and a small hotel in Amsterdam. I packed my old backpack, the same one from my first trip to London, and smiled to myself. This was no longer a dream. It was my life. When I arrived in Amsterdam, it was raining. Soft, cold rain that made the streets shine under the lights. I didn't mind. I found my hotel easily. At the reception, the woman greeted me in Dutch, but when she saw my face, she switched to English without hesitation. I answered without fear. I even joked about the rain. She laughed. It felt easy, natural, human. In the days that followed, I walked along the canals, visited museums, sat in small cafes. I spoke to people from all over the world. Some were tourists like me. Some were locals happy to share advice. Every conversation gave me more confidence. I asked for directions, ordered food, bought train tickets, all in English. It was like playing music on an instrument that finally obeyed my hands. I made mistakes sometimes, of course. Sometimes I forgot a word. Sometimes I needed to repeat myself. But no one cared. People smiled, helped, answered. I realized something beautiful: perfect English was not important. Communication was. One evening, I sat on a bench near a quiet canal. The sky was purple and gold, and small boats floated by like dreams. A man sat down next to me. He was an artist from Argentina, traveling through Europe. We talked for 2 hours about life, art, cities, family. We spoke in English, of course. At one moment he said, "Isn't it strange? Without English, we would sit here in silence. With English, we have this conversation, this connection." I smiled and said, "Yes. That's why I can't stop learning it." When I returned home, I knew it was time for a bigger change. I didn't want to fix cars anymore. I wanted to work with people. I wanted to work with languages. I searched online and found a travel company that needed assistance for group tours. I sent them an email, simple and clear, explaining my story. A week later they replied. They wanted to meet me. The interview would be in English. The day of the interview, I put on my best shirt and took a deep breath before opening the video call. The manager asked me about my travels, my experience, my goals. I answered honestly. I told him about my first English words, about London, Scotland, Amsterdam, about all the conversations that changed my life. At the end, he said, "We like your spirit. We need people like you." 2 days later, they offered me the job. Now, I work with travelers from many countries. I organize tours, answer emails, solve problems, and sometimes guide small groups myself. Every day I speak English. Every day I learn new things. English is no longer something I study. It is something I live. Sometimes, late at night, I think back to that cold evening years ago, sitting in my small kitchen, opening that first simple English book. I remember the fear, the excitement, the feeling of stepping into the unknown. I had no idea then how much one decision could change my life. I thought I was learning English just to buy train tickets, to order coffee, to survive in foreign countries. But in the end, English gave me much more. It gave me freedom. It gave me courage. It gave me a life bigger than I ever imagined. And the best part is, my journey is still only beginning. The first time I stood in front of a group of tourists, I felt nervous again. It was a feeling I had almost forgotten. 10 people from different countries were looking at me, waiting for me to speak. I took a deep breath and smiled. My voice was a little shaky at first, but after a few sentences, it became steady. I told them where we were going, what we would see, what they should know about the city. I watched their faces. They listened. They understood. I realized then that learning English had given me more than just words. It had given me the power to lead, to connect, to make people feel safe and welcome in a new place. Every tour became easier. Every conversation became more natural. Soon I wasn't just giving information. I was telling stories. I was making people laugh. I was answering strange and funny questions. I was sharing my passion for travel and discovery. And all the time, English was the bridge between us. It carried my words from my heart to theirs. As the months passed, I traveled more and more. I visited cities I had only seen in pictures before. Paris, Dublin, Prague, Vienna. Each time I used English. Each time it opened doors. Sometimes in a restaurant, sometimes in a small bookshop, sometimes when asking an old man for directions in the rain. Every time I said, "Excuse me," every time I asked, "Could you help me, please?" I felt grateful for the long hours spent with my notebook and my old laptop. I knew now that those hours had not been a sacrifice. They had been a gift to my future self. There were moments of difficulty too. Flights were delayed. Hotels lost reservations. Trains were cancelled. But even in these moments, English helped. It helped me explain, to find solutions, to stay calm. I was no longer afraid of problems. I was ready for them. I had the words. I had the confidence. One evening, after a long day of travel, I sat alone on a quiet street in Rome, drinking a coffee under a warm orange sky. I thought about how far I had come. Not just in kilometers, but in life. I thought about the man I used to be, the one who dreamed in a small kitchen but was too afraid to move. I wanted to tell that man, start today. Even if you don't know where the road leads. Even if you are scared. Start. Because learning English didn't just change my travel plans. It changed me. It showed me that I was stronger than my fear. It taught me that small steps can lead to big places. It proved that even the simplest words, spoken with courage, can open the world. Now, when people ask me why I speak English so well, I smile. I tell them I started learning because I wanted to travel. But somewhere along the way, I realized I couldn't stop. English had become a part of my life, my mind, and my heart. It gave me a bigger world. It gave me endless roads to follow. And it gave me a simple but powerful truth. When you open yourself to a new language, you are not just learning words. You are learning how to live without fear. And that is a lesson that no one can ever take away from you. Thank you for listening to this story. If you liked it, write about it in the comments and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new stories.